Pedro Pascal spotted on billionaire's yacht with gay for pay Mega Fallon. What? Oh no.
Are they, like, together?
The story we're running with.
Cancelled. He can't be pro-trans if he's hanging out with MAGA.
He can't be a good person if he's hanging out with a felon.
Well, he can't be a lefty if he's on a yacht.
Whoa, you don't even know the full story? Like, whose yacht is it? Are they there together? Or just, like, both friends of the owner? Who says he's gay for pay? What makes him a felon? How do you even know he's MAGA?
Oh yeah, no, those are good points. Hang on. Says he was arrested for putting someone in a headlock when they attacked his dog.
His dog? I would commit a felony for my dog every time.
Seems like he wasn't charged, though.
That's good. No one should be charged for protecting it.
It doesn't mean he's not MAGA.
Sure. But Pascal has a trans sister. He wouldn't just hang out with MAGA if he knew they had anti-trans thoughts. Plus the guy's gay.
Gay for pay.
That feels like a reductive term.
Whatever, people, I have a deadline. Are we cancelling him in his article or not?
No.
It's Pedro. We forgive. Probably just didn't know who he was talking to.
And the whole idea of cancelling is...
Hang on. Didn't you use Taylor Swift's private plane 5 times last month?
What? No, but that was for... No, like my tour bus broke down and then Didn't you give me the benefit of the doubt? Just like...
Oh, honey, no. That's not the way it works around here.
That's me.
By the end of this song.
The president had a relationship with Lewinsky.
No one came up to me. No one bothered.
Even if you think that I'm lying, you still couldn't look me in the eye and tell me that you think on social media there's been a fair representation.
Imagine this. A celebrity security card makes the decision. The internet blames the woman. A president abuses his power.
The woman becomes the joke.
A wardrobe malfunction happens.
The woman's career ends.
Different women, different decades, different scandals, but the same pattern. The media calls it cancel culture. But what if we've been looking at the wrong thing? Because after looking into the history, I don't think women are simply cancelled more often. I think women are turned into symbols for events they didn't create. And once you become the symbol, facts almost stop mattering. Cancel culture has a gender problem. Whenever people hear the words cancel culture, they immediately split into two camps. Either cancel culture doesn't exist, or everyone's terrified they'll be cancelled. You can't say anything these days.
What awful things were you saying before?
I actually think both conversations miss something that's much more interesting, because consequences exist. Public criticism exists, and sometimes people absolutely deserve both. But who receives those consequences? For how long? And for whose actions? Looking through history, from Anne Boleyn to Britney Spears, there's a through line. There's actually a surprisingly consistent pattern. The consequences of actions aren't exactly distributed equally. And not only that, but women are expected to be morally responsible, not only for themselves, but for the behaviour of everyone around them.
This is giving me anxiety.
Yes, there's a lot to be anxious about nowadays. I mean, you just look at social media or flip through a newspaper for 2 seconds and instantly it's heart palpitations, sweaty palms and a headache.
It's all too much. I think I just need to lie down.
Where do you think we're going?
No, I just need to...
No. No time to wind down or relax over here. On top of the world seemingly decided to descend into Armageddon, there's a household to run and maintain. Tiny humans that must be attached to a hip at all times.
I just want to wee.
Bills to be paid, emails that need replying to. Wait, did I ever get back to that person? Have I missed that work deadline? Have I left the hob on?
When was the last time you used a gas hob?
Well, induction hobs can be left on too. Life is stressful for everyone, no matter what it is you're going through. The problem is that when your nervous system is kind of stuck in that fight or flight mode, never resting, always on.
Oh, sure, yeah, I've tried the meditation apps, the candles in the bar, the breathing exercises. They just don't get to the root of the problem.
Yes, you see, the vagus nerve is the master brake of the stress response, and when it's not working properly, your body can't turn off its high alert mode on its own. Personally, I feel it in my body too. I just get really tense and my shoulders feel super tight, which can then trigger a migraine. Not great. I know a lot of you with soft tissue issues can relate. Then I found falsetto, and finally I can achieve a sense of calm. I pop it on when I'm doing everyday life things, and I'm so thankful that they decided to sponsor this video so I can share this great device with you. I just sync into the app, apply the electrode gel to help with conductivity, put the device around my neck, find my chosen program in the app, and start the session. After about 5 minutes, I can genuinely feel myself getting more relaxed.
Oof. I mean, there may be Armageddon going on outside, but at least inside my mind and body, I feel some peace.
If you want to try it out, I've left you a link in the description and the top pinned comment below. It's risk-free thanks to a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can test it out and see how your body responds.
Joyfully, probably.
Part 1. Does cancel culture even exist? The Cambridge Dictionary defines cancel culture as a way of behaving in a society or group, especially on social media, in which it is common to completely reject and stop supporting someone because they have said or done something that offends you. That sounds straightforward.
No, cancel culture is public bullying.
What? No, cancel culture is right-wing propaganda.
Isn't cancel culture just accountability?
I thought it was more like the consequences of your actions catching up with you.
Well, I think at this point it's become little more than a political buzzword. But we are making a lot of money on articles about it.
Political scientist Eve Ng argues that cancel culture isn't one clearly defined phenomenon at all, but a contested cultural label that different groups use to describe very different kinds of public criticism. So, whatever we call it, arguing about the label cancel culture isn't really the point. What we need to be looking at is the type of public accountability different people are putting under that heading. Most of us will probably agree. There are situations where public pressure has been incredibly important. Without collective public pressure, powerful institutions often don't change, which is why I don't actually think this story begins with Twitter. It begins in 19th century Ireland.
Plot twist.
Before cancel culture, there was boycott. The word boycott literally comes from a man named Charles Boycott.
What, really?
Yes. Really? Captain Charles Boycott was an English land agent working in Ireland during the Land War of 1880.
An Englishman being an arse in Ireland. Can see where this is going.
After refusing to reduce rents for tenant farmers during difficult harvest and trying to evict starving families, his local community organised to socially and economically ostracise him. Nobody would harvest his crops. Nobody would trade with him. Nobody would sell him goods. Nobody would deliver his letters. Nobody would even speak to him. He deserved it. Instead of violence, they used collective refusal. The extreme social and economic pressure was so effective that his surname became a new verb in the English language for organised isolation. To boycott. Try it on your parents. And that strategy has shaped history ever since. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi's Salt March challenged British colonial rule through mass civil disobedience and economic resistance. The Montgomery bus boycott throughout 1956 became one of the defining moments of the American civil rights movements after Rosa Parks refused to go up her seat. More recently, consumers have organised boycotts against corporations over environmental concerns, labour practices, and the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of companies. Yes! Huda Beauty's not on the list. I can keep my setting powder.
Whether those campaigns succeeded completely or not, boycotts have repeatedly demonstrated that when enough ordinary people act together, they can influence institutions far more powerful than themselves. That's not new. That's democracy in action.
Unfortunate side effects include companies being weak to right-wing boycotts, billionaires building a tolerance for us hating them, giant monopolies realising that if they just buy up the competition, we'll have to buy their thing, general cynical malaise.
But boycotting has never been about simply disliking someone. It's collective pressure designed to encourage change. Yes, that might be against an individual, but it's a person with a lot of power over the masses, or a huge global company. And that's an important distinction. Historically, the goal wasn't necessarily to erase people, it was just to change behaviour. From boycott to cancel culture. The internet changed one thing dramatically: scale. Organising a boycott once required meetings, leaflets, phone calls, weeks of planning. Today, it takes one viral post, one TikTok, one screenshot. Within hours, millions of people can collectively decide to unfollow, unsubscribe, stop buying, or publicly condemn someone. Digital technology dramatically lowered the barriers to collective action. Sometimes that's incredibly powerful and amazing. Sometimes it's terrifying.
Pop star Story Puff hates blue M&Ms.
Oh my god.
What? No, I said I love red M&Ms. I didn't say...
I'm putting this all over my story. I can't believe she said that.
I didn't...
I'm so over her. Unfollow. Block.
Researcher Erica Buchman argues there's an important difference between traditional boycotting and what we now call cancel culture. She writes in her 2023 book, Boycotting versus Cancelling, Exploring Consumer Activism Against Corporations, that cancel culture is more extreme than boycotting in that it attempts to silence corporate entities and remove them entirely from society, while the goal of boycotting is to enact change within a company's practices. Not everyone would agree with that distinction. Some scholars argue cancel culture is just simply a new name for public accountability. Others believe online outrage has become something qualitatively different. The debate itself remains very much alive, but where did the word cancelled come from?
Twitter? Facebook?
Message boards?
The phrase, "you're cancelled," actually predates social media. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, one of its earliest recorded appearances was in the 1981 chic song, Your Love is Cancelled. I don't actually know how it goes. The phrase later appeared in the 1991 film New Jack City, and by the mid-2000s it was appearing in rap lyrics. But something important happened in the mid-2010s. Black Twitter began using the phrase jokingly, ironically, and sometimes seriously to describe withdrawing support from public figures. As the Washington Post later observed, the phrase was subsequently adopted into mainstream culture, where it gradually lost much of its original context.
As most words stolen from AAVE and queer language do.
By 2018, major newspapers have begun using cancel culture as a political and cultural phenomenon. According to research from Middlebury College's Media Portrayals of Minorities project, mentions exploded between 2018 and 2021. The same pattern appeared in the United Kingdom. King's College London found just 6 UK newspaper articles used the phrase in 2018. By 2021, there were more than 3,000 mentions. The phrase had become everywhere. Me Too and the question of accountability. It is impossible to talk about this period without talking about Me Too. The movement gave millions of survivors a language to describe experiences they had previously felt unable to discuss publicly. For many women and some men, it was transformational. Powerful men who had spent decades protected by institutions suddenly faced scrutiny. Journalists, actors, politicians, executives. The movement fundamentally changed conversations around workplace harassment and abuse. That was, and remains, a hugely significant cultural shift. But alongside that shift, another debate emerged. What happens when accusations spread faster than investigations? How should we balance believing potential victims whilst also recognising that public opinion is not the same thing as a courtroom?
The Me Too movement, not cancel culture, had led to the cancellation of figures who legitimately deserve it.
Okay, chill out. That is stronger than evidence supports. There are many people publicly associated with Me Too whose allegations were later disputed or settled in civil court, dropped, or never even resulted in criminal convictions. Trust me, my paper got sued because we printed those allegations. Now we're only online.
I don't feel sorry for you. But there are definitely perpetrators who have faced absolutely no meaningful consequences at all, so it's not like the Me Too movement solved everything.
Innocent until proven guilty is a legal principle governing criminal courts, but public opinion has never worked that way, and the internet certainly doesn't. What about woke? Around the same time, another word entered mainstream political debate.
You mean the white people stole it?
Woke. Today, it's often used as an insult, but that wasn't always its meaning. The term has roots in African American culture again, where it referred to remaining awake to racism and injustice. Historians trace early uses back to the 1920s, whilst musicians and activists revived it in the 2000s before it became closely associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. Being woke originally meant
paying attention, being socially conscious, being aware of systems of inequality. Good stuff.
But language changes. As the term entered mainstream politics, many conservative commentators and politicians adopted woke as a catch-all criticism of progressive politics. This shift transformed a term rooted in black political consciousness into a pejorative label used in wider culture war debates. Research by King's College London found that the proportion of people who considered woke an insult increased substantially between 2020 and 2023, particularly among conservative voters and Leave supporters. The word hadn't just become popular, it had become politically contested.
Grandad, if over 50,000 immigrants are coming in small boats every single day, where are they? How come there's still only one non-white person in your village? Yes, I know, I'm too woke to get it.
And somewhere, in the middle of all that, cancel culture became tied to the idea of wokeness.
Public accountability is finally reaching people who have long escaped any consequences. Sounds good.
No, society's become performative, quick to condemn and reluctant to forgive.
Sounds bad?
Whichever view you hold, one thing is undeniably true. We are living through a period where many people feel an expectation to be socially aware, not just in what we believe privately, but in what we say publicly, what we endorse, and what we choose to remain silent about, even accidentally.
Oh no, that drought is awful. Look at these poor starving babies. I should raise awareness about this on my story. Wait, I forgot to say anything about that earthquake last week. If I post this drought, people ask why I haven't said anything about the other drought, and maybe it's just better if I don't say anything. Then no one will yell at me, especially not my manager for the 50th time this week. Stupid M&M story.
Social media has made those expectations visible in a way previous generations never experienced.
You should probably just say something, though. especially if you think you can help.
And you won't write badly about me for the things I forgot to say?
Oh no, I will.
The question we should really be asking. So, after reading all of this research for a "Does cancel culture really exist?" video, I started to wonder if I'd been asking the wrong question. Because I don't actually think the most interesting question is, does cancel culture exist like the Daily Mail readers think it does? I think the more interesting question is, when a scandal happens, who becomes its symbol? Who receives understanding? Who gets complexity? Who gets redemption arc? And who becomes frozen forever in a single headline? In her 2017 book, Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny, philosopher Kate Manne coined the term himpathy to describe the disproportionate sympathy society extends to powerful men accused of wrongdoing, often at the expense of the women around them, even if their ex-wives were famous in their own right. Keep that idea in the back of your mind, because by the end of this video, I think you'll start spotting it everywhere. Because once I started looking through the history, it wasn't the powerful men being held to account for a tiny fraction of the awful things they had done, cared about. It was the women, from Anne Boleyn to Monica Lewinsky to Janet Jackson to Chappell Roan, who were judged not for what they do, but often for what they came to represent, and for the crimes of those around them.
When a scandal happens, why does the woman so often become the story?
Part 2. When women become the story. On the 21st of March 2026, Brazilian football player Jorginho posted a lengthy Instagram statement calling out Chappell Roan following an incident involving his 11-year-old daughter at a luxury hotel in Sao Paulo. According to Jorginho, his daughter, Ada Law,
Her bio dad's Jude Law.
he has a lot of kids. According to Jorginho, young Ada is a huge fan of Chappell Roan and unexpectedly found herself staying at the same hotel as the singer during the Lollapalooza Brazil festival weekend. During breakfast at the hotel, Ada believed she'd seen her idol and discreetly approached to make sure it was her. According to her parents, Ada merely walked past the table where Chappell was having breakfast, smiled upon recognizing her, and went straight back to her family without stopping. She did not speak, pause, or ask for a photo. It was then, according to the football player's complaint, that Chappell Roan's security team intervened inappropriately, following the child back to her own table and speaking in an aggressive manner. The guard accused the child of harassing and disrespecting the singer and threatened to file a complaint with the hotel.
In Brazil, against Jorginho's kids? Good luck with that.
According to Jorginho, my daughter was very upset and cried a lot. I have lived with soccer, public exposure, and public figures, and I understand very well what respect and boundaries are. What happened was not that. It was just a child admiring someone. The Instagram post clearly stated that the reaction was completely disproportionate. It was an 11-year-old who had done nothing more than smile, and he threw in the classic, "Without your fans, you would be nobody." And to the fans, she does not deserve your affection. No one should go through this, much less a child. Ada had even made a sign.
Not a sign! Cancel Chappell Roan immediately.
The Instagram post went viral soon after and triggered a massive online reaction, boycott and backlash against the singer, even leading to Rio de Janeiro's mayor, Eduardo Cavalier, to ban her from performing in his city, despite having reportedly drawn one of the biggest crowds in the festival's history, like 2 years prior. She was about to be banned from Brazil itself.
I told you so.
The public collapsed the distinction between her and her entourage. Chappell Roan defended herself in a video stating, "What happened today with a mother and child who were involved with a security guard who is not my personal security, I didn't even see. I didn't even see a woman and a child. No one came up to me. No one bothered me." The online hate train continued, despite the security guard involved, Pascal Duvier, publicly admitting that he actually represented a different artist staying at the hotel and Chappell had not asked him to approach the girl. A few weeks of hate later, Jorginho issued a follow-up statement on Instagram, clarifying it was clear she had no knowledge of what took place at breakfast and had not asked anyone to approach them. She was understanding and sympathetic to what had happened to our child. Whilst we still do not know what prompted the security guard to approach them, and do not believe an 11-year-old at breakfast could reasonably be seen as any kind of security threat, it is now clear that he was not acting on behalf of Chappell. Jorginho then expressed regret for the impact of his initial post and declared, "As far as I am concerned, this matter is closed."
Well, that's nice for him. He's not the one getting online hate.
Yes, he's not the one for whom this incident was brought up time and time again. He's not the one for whom public judgment arrived before the facts were even established. He's the one who passed the judgment. We've established that cancel culture is a term that's hard to pin down, and we've seen that public accountability has existed for centuries. And now we're seeing how social media can supercharge something that used to happen much more slowly. False or incomplete information often spreads faster the later corrections. The first version of a story is frequently the version that sticks. Psychologists call this the continued influence effect. Once you've built a narrative in our minds, it's surprisingly difficult to replace it completely, even after we're presented with new evidence. As I was looking at dozens of public controversies for the video I had planned about how cancel culture isn't real, how many of us have felt like yelling that back over the Christmas dinner table? I just kept noticing. The public conversation always seemed to settle on one woman. Not always the most powerful person, not always the person who made the decision, not even necessarily the person who caused the controversy. And yet, she became the face of it. How often have women become symbols of events they neither initiated nor controlled? That question isn't just mine. It reflects a broader concern in feminist scholarship about how responsibility is distributed in public life. Philosopher Kate Main argues that misogyny often isn't simply about disliking women. Instead, it functions to police women who are perceived to have stepped outside expected social roles. Women are expected to be accommodating, likeable, and morally responsible, not only for themselves, but often for the people around them. And the people accusing them aren't always the general public themselves. 23% of the over 100,000 posts raging at Chappell Roan about this incident after Giorgino's initial Instagram post were likely created by bots. Keep that in mind. Now, this isn't about arguing whether every celebrity interaction is handled perfectly, it's something more specific. Why did so many people instinctively assume she must have personally instructed the security guard to be mean to a little child? It's all her fault.
I don't know. Maybe it's just modern times. It feels like fans now have this expectation that the behaviour of anyone in our orbit reflects our own character.
Is that really a gender difference? Duh. We've all seen male celebrities surrounded by security who get, aggressive.
But the celebrity themselves faced relatively little lasting backlash. Justin Bieber's bodyguards have been accused on several occasions of assaulting photographers, forcibly removing fans, and using excessive force at concerts. According to celebrity photographer Jason Nicholas, in November 2010, Bieber's bodyguard, Kenneth Hamilton, physically accosted him as he tried to take a photo of the teen leaving New York City's London hotel. Bieber comes out with a small group, 2 bodyguards, 1 handler and 1 other person. Without blocking the door, I stuck my camera out with my arm and shot him. The bodyguard snapped. He shoved me up against the SUV. He was super aggressive and it happened right in front of Bieber, who just got right in the car. Tabloids reported on the situation in a way entirely at odds with the reception Chappell Roan had received. Don't you know that messing with the Biebs means messing with the whole posse? Wrote E! I know that was... Posse doesn't sound right coming from my mouth. The photographer was then charged with assault with a deadly weapon, his camera being the weapon. Truly deadly. In May of 2013, photographer Jeffrey Binion filed a police report claiming the singer's security attacked him and stole his memory card after he tried to take photos of Bieber skateboarding. During the incident, Justin was caught on video screaming to his entourage to grab that camera, get the effing camera out of here. But again, his treatment in the press was kind. Bieber's career wasn't meaningfully affected by these episodes. He just performed at the World Cup.
In the weirdest, most American thing ever squeezed into a football game, footballers don't have half-time. That would be ridiculous because then their bodies would cool down. Why would we want their bodies to cool down? We want them to keep on playing football. We don't give them a long break in the middle. They just swap sides. Not the time.
The headlines were generally framed as Justin Bieber's bodyguard rather than Justin Bieber assaults. Even when Bieber was named in the lawsuits, the media and public often treated the incidents as problems caused by security doing their jobs too aggressively. You might say, Jessica, these examples are all from over 10 years ago when he was rising up into fame, navigating being in front of the public eye. He was just a kid. Give him a break. Well, yes. Anyone in the limelight should receive grace and have the same right to privacy, especially if they are a literal child. But here it is, still happening to this day. Is his grace period now over? With Bieber, when concerns are raised, we're worried for his safety. We understand he's had a difficult time with paparazzi throughout his life. But with Chappell, it's reported very matter-of-factly. No emotional sympathy for her. Equally, and because I apparently can't stop talking about football, Cristiano Ronaldo's security personnel have occasionally been criticised for rough treatment of fans and photographers. Again, the narrative was largely Ronaldo's security, rather than Ronaldo should be cancelled.
Although he definitely should be cancelled for that other thing.
Not disagreeing with you there.
The expectation seems to be that elite athletes have security who sometimes overstep. Or we could look at Prince Harry, whose protection officers have occasionally had confrontations with photographers. Those incidents are usually discussed in terms of security protocol, protecting his family, or media intrusion, rather than suggesting that Harry himself should face consequences because someone protecting him acted aggressively.
Although that's just historically appropriate. Royal bodyguards have assaulted or intimidated members of the public for centuries.
The King's Guard or aristocratic retainers sometimes beat civilians who got too close to monarchs or noblemen. Unless the ruler had explicitly ordered it, contemporaries just generally blamed the guards, thought they were doing their jobs, rather than assuming the sovereign personally endorsed their every action. For women, that distinction seems to collapse much more easily. Why do we expect so much from her? Research suggests that women in leadership and public life are more likely than men to have the behaviour of those around them attributed to them personally. Studies in organisational psychology have found that female leaders are often judged more holistically. People evaluate not just their own actions, but also the conduct of their team. Men, by contrast, are more likely to have subordinates' mistakes treated as independent failures rather than reflections of their own competence or character.
Doesn't mean every difference in public reaction is caused by gender.
Oh, of course not. Other factors matter too. The celebrity's existing public image, how the incident is reported, whether they responded quickly, the seriousness of what happened, and the broader cultural moment. But also, part of the answer may lie in something surprisingly old-fashioned. For centuries, women weren't simply expected to behave well. They were expected to maintain morality, to smooth over conflict, to be endlessly patient, to anticipate other people's feelings. Historians and feminist scholars have long argued that these expectations grew from traditional gender roles, where women were positioned as the moral centre of the family, whilst men occupied public life. The woman and everyone around her became one moral unit. And even as society has changed, those expectations haven't disappeared entirely.
They just moved online.
Today, we often expect women to be kind, approachable, emotionally available, gracious under pressure. If they aren't, their behaviour is much more likely to be interpreted as revealing something about their character.
Like how an upset and badly behaved child is a reflection on my mothering, but no one is asking what on earth his dad is doing to stop this tantrum.
Yes, like that. We can see how neatly shown in the Chappell Roan situation, criticism quickly shifts from behaviour to identity. Not, she handled that interaction badly, but she's vague, she's arrogant, she's ungrateful. Behaviour becomes biography. One mistake becomes evidence of who she has always really been. The himpathy of it all. Kate Main offers another concept that's incredibly useful here. She calls it himpathy. Himpathy describes the disproportionate sympathy society often extends towards powerful men accused of wrongdoing, whilst comparatively less empathy is afforded to women who are harmed, marginalised, or simply caught up in the same events. It's not that men are never criticised, they absolutely are. Rather, their mistakes are more likely to be framed as complicated, nuanced, human, temporary.
Even if they attack their wife and children on an aeroplane, allegedly. Do I have to say, God, I keep getting sued.
Women are far more often to become morality tales, and it is absolutely not unique to Chappell Roan. Monica Lewinsky. On the 17th of January 1998, the gossip and news aggregation site Drudge Report posted that Newsweek was sitting on a story about an affair between the then 49-year-old President Bill Clinton and a 22-year-old White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. 4 days later, the Washington Post and other news outlets ran their own stories on the relationship, which was vehemently denied by Clinton and the White House. They could not stop the media frenzy that would go on to hound the rest of Clinton's presidency, and his wife's eventual presidential campaign too, and Monica Lewinsky's entire life. A Centre survey taken shortly after Clinton's January 26, 1998 denial of the affair allegations found that 71% of Americans approved of how he was handling his job as president, 10 percentage points higher than a survey taken just before the scandal broke. Clinton benefited from widespread support for his policies and skepticism about the media's coverage of the allegation. Indeed, Clinton denied the allegations, both publicly and in a sworn deposition, but later admitted they were true. Although a further investigation led to charges of perjury and the impeachment of Clinton in December 1998 by the US House of Representatives, in February of 1999 he was subsequently acquitted on both impeachment charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Interestingly, Clinton received the highest job approval ratings of his administration during the Lewinsky impeachment controversy. As the Lewinsky situation unfolded, Clinton's job approval went up, not down. and his ratings remained high for the duration of the impeachment proceedings. Of note, the average presidential approval rating for every year from the Eisenhower administration to the present very politicized times was 56.1. Bill Clinton's 1998 average, 63.8, is thus significantly above this 40-year average.
The current one is on 34%.
The most powerful man involved largely recovered politically, whilst Lewinsky became the enduring symbol of the scandal. Whilst she still maintains that the 18-month-long relationship was consensual, the way the media treated her was anything but.
Trigger warning?
She became the joke. She had her name become shorthand for scandal. She spent decades as the punchline of late-night comedy. Today, many journalists and cultural historians have reflected on the extraordinary imbalance of how they were treated. Lewinsky herself has spoken movingly about becoming patient zero of losing a personal reputation on a global scale. She wasn't simply criticized, she became a cultural symbol, a role she neither sought nor controlled. She also had a lot of legal bills because someone more powerful than her decided what she was allowed to be truthful about, and then they got found out.
Also, this was an unpaid internship.
Which somehow makes it worse, because she still had living expenses while this was all going on, and her name was considered too toxic for her to even get a job. She even lost a job endorsing the diet company Jenny Craig. What? In 2000, Lewinsky began appearing in television commercials for the company as part of a $1 million endorsement deal, which required her to lose 40 or more pounds in 6 months. That's not humiliating at all. While she did desire a return to a more private life, she needed the money to pay off those legal fees, and she believed in the product. But despite gaining the company considerable publicity, the choice of Lewinsky as a role model did prove controversial for Jenny Craig, and some of its private franchises switched to an older advertising campaign. So the company just cut off her campaign and paid only $300,000 of the $1 million contracted for her involvement. Ouch!
Well, yeah.
She has also said that she believes he has escaped from overwhelming criticism more easily than she did, and she still gets disinvited from parties when he accepts an invitation.
Is that a gender thing?
Well, the cultural punishment vastly outweighed her agency compared with other participants.
Fair.
The pattern. Notice what connects these stories. It's not simply misogyny, it's something more specific. The public often collapses the distinction between the woman and the event. The scandal becomes her. The controversy becomes her. Everyone else's actions fade into the background. She carries the symbolic weight. And once someone becomes a symbol, facts become surprisingly difficult to disentangle from expectations. Social psychologist Jonathan Hutt has written that people are remarkably good at constructing moral narratives first and then searching for evidence afterwards. And whether or not you agree with every aspect of his work, it's a useful reminder that our moral judgments are rarely as objective as we'd like to believe. Of course, none of this means that women should never be criticised. Sometimes criticism is entirely justified. Sometimes women abuse power. Some women spread misinformation. Some women genuinely cause harm. That's not the argument. The argument is about proportion. Who receives grace? Who receives complexity? And who becomes permanently defined by a single moment? Take Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. Two people involved in the same event. Two extraordinarily different consequences. And that difference tells us an enormous amount about who society is willing to forgive. Part 3. Women don't get redemption arcs.
You know what? I can't believe he said that. Abhorrent. I'm never supporting him again.
Well...
Oh, new music.
Oh, I can't believe how cute he looks with that new puppy.
Oh, this new album's so sweet. I think we could cry.
Have you ever noticed that men are allowed to have a redemption arc? Oh, is that Johnny Depp in a movie poster? Again? Brad Pitt, what are you doing here? Chris Brown? People still buy Chris Brown tickets? Kanye? A man can behave terribly, make a public apology, go away for a while, come back, and eventually people just start talking about his growth, or his difficult childhood, his struggles, his mental health, his addiction, his mistakes, his journey, how he absolutely did not mean to do that thing on the plane. It was all her fault anyway for checks notes, potentially starting a relationship with him whilst he was married, even though he was the married one. It had been a decade of relationship by that point, and, you know, injuring your wife and children's never right, but...
He becomes complicated. It sells really well. People love a man with a moody backstory.
Women can be complicated too.
But somehow we're much more likely to become evidence. And once that label sticks,
evidence that she's selfish, evidence that she's unstable, evidence that she's a bad mother, evidence that she's arrogant, evidence that she's not a nice person.
And once that label sticks, it can become incredibly difficult to remove. Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. In 2004, industry icon Janet Jackson and Britney's ex, Justin Timberlake, performed during the Super Bowl halftime show. At the end of their performance, Timberlake pulled off part of Jackson's costume, briefly exposing her breast.
Sounds like assault to me.
I remember this becoming one of the biggest media controversies of the year. I also remember being incredibly confused because I assumed this was clearly pre-planned, so why were people getting upset? Didn't they do this in the rehearsal? Whether they did or not, it was Janet Jackson who paid an enormous price. Radio stations dropped or reduced airplay of her songs, her television appearances were cancelled, and she was effectively punished by an industry that had profited enormously from her image since she was a young child.
The misogyny was clear.
But this was a performance involving two people, only one of whom actively tore the other's clothing. Yet the cultural consequences overwhelmingly landed on the other one. Janet became the scandal. Justin, he just became the person who'd accidentally participated in it. He was just there. And there's another layer here, obviously. Janet was already one of the most successful women in popular music. Her sexuality had always been part of her public image, but there is a difference between a woman being sexually desirable and a woman being seen as having sexual agency, especially when she's not white. The first can be incredibly profitable. The second can make the general public deeply uncomfortable. Women in popular culture are frequently encouraged to be attractive and sexually visible, while simultaneously being punished when that sexuality appears uncontrolled, excessive, threatening, or outside the boundaries that society considers acceptable. In other words, be sexy, but not too sexy. Be confident, but don't appear arrogant. Own your sexuality, but don't make other people uncomfortable with it. Be powerful, but don't look like you're enjoying power too much.
And Justin Timberlake's career?
It continued. Of course, that doesn't mean absolutely nothing happened to him. He received criticism, there was backlash, and in recent years his role in the whole incident has been discussed much more critically, since, he actually did the thing, and then he just threw her under the bus. Much like that whole purity promise thing he did with Britney. Does this man have a pattern? But compare the long-term cultural narratives. Janet Jackson became synonymous with this incident. Justin Timberlake largely just kind of remained Justin Timberlake, just ruining the tour.
Which tour?
The World Tour! It's not, did people criticise both, but did the criticism become their identity? Because that's what I mean when I say that women aren't always given redemption arcs. The criticism doesn't necessarily disappear for men, but it can become one chapter. For women, it can become the title of the book. Serena Williams. And this gets even more interesting when we look at women who refuse to behave quietly. Serena Williams has spent much of her career navigating expectations around how a woman, particularly a black woman, is supposed to express anger. In the 2018 US Open final, Williams argued with umpire Carlos Ramos after receiving a series of penalties. She called the umpire a thief. She was penalised, and the incident became a global conversation. Now, Serena was not automatically right about everything she said. Athletes can be criticised, officials can be challenged, rules matter. But look at the language that surrounded the incident. Angry, unhinged, outburst, tantrum. And this is where intersectionality becomes crucial, because Serena wasn't navigating gender expectations alone, she was navigating expectations around black femininity.
Intersectionality, baby.
Yes, if you're playing Jessica Bingo, cross that one off. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality to describe how different systems of power can overlap, creating experiences that cannot be understood by looking at just one identity at a time. And Serena is a perfect example of why that matters. Passion in sport is normal. Anger in sport is normal. But which women are allowed to express anger without having their entire characters judged by it? Men in professional sport have displayed extraordinary levels of anger for decades. Shouting, swearing, throwing equipment, arguing with officials, sometimes worse. Passion, intensity, competitive spirit, leadership. But when women express anger, especially women who already sit outside dominant expectations of femininity, the language can change dramatically. Suddenly we're talking about temperament, character, mental stability. Isn't she just a bit difficult? The likability tax. Again, if you're successful, you need to be humble. If you're wealthy, you need to be generous. If you're beautiful, you need to be self-deprecating. If you're powerful, you need to assure everyone that you're still nice. And if you're not nice, people can decide that you've forfeited the right to be respected. It affects ordinary femme-coded people too, because we're constantly receiving cultural messages about what a good woman looks like. And when someone violates that template, we don't simply criticise the action, we often question whether she is still a good woman. Whether it's mini Miley Cyrus being provocative, Britney having a mental breakdown, or female celebrities who have children with more than one person, despite most male celebrities seemingly having random children around the place.
Most is probably an overstatement.
Here's a question I think we should ask much more often. Who appointed these women as our moral role models? I mean, I'm a mother and I don't think I've asked any celebrities to come and be a role model to my children. Did Janet Jackson volunteer to raise our children? Did Serena Williams agree to demonstrate perfect emotional regulation for every young girl watching tennis? Did Miley Cyrus sign a contract promising to embody ideal femininity? Of course not. Celebrity isn't real per se, but as Monica Lewinsky proves, the backlash very much can be for them. This connects to a much older idea of femininity. Women were historically associated with the private sphere, the family, children, morality, respectability. Men could go out into the world and make mistakes. Women were expected to maintain the moral reputation of the household. And although modern women obviously have vastly more autonomy, these cultural expectations haven't completely disappeared. But there's an even bigger problem, because the consequences don't fall equally on all women. A white, straight, able-bodied woman, a black woman, a disabled woman, a queer woman, and a trans woman are not necessarily walking into the same social expectations. And when you add those assumptions together, the likability tax can become enormous. Because now you're not just being punished for breaking one rule, you're being judged against several sets of expectations at once. And that is where the story of cancel culture becomes a story about intersectionality. Because what happens when you're not only expected to be a perfect woman, but a perfect black woman, a perfect queer woman, a perfect disabled woman, a perfect representation of an entire community? And what happens when the world decides you failed? So after all of this, I don't think the answer is that women should be immune from criticism. Nicki Minaj continues to publicly defend the convicted sex offenders in her life and bullies their victims, even the ones who are underage, whilst also now shilling for Trump in probably an attempt to get them a pardon.
Good luck with that.
And I don't think every woman who faces backlash is a victim of misogyny. J.K. Rowling is an awful, awful turf. Should we be boycotting every single Harry Potter related thing that will eventually leak back even a percentage point of one tiny penny back to her? Yes. Are we then collectively boycotting Roald Dahl's works due to his racist and eugenicist beliefs? No, because the comparison isn't really fair. He is long dead, his family and estate have come out to condemn those beliefs, and he isn't using that money to champion his ideological point of view. J.K. Rowling is using her money to actively make life harder for trans people.
Don't do it. Put the Gryffindor mug down. You don't need it.
The difference there isn't misogyny. In 100 years' time, if her descendants come out and say she believed awful things about trans people and they want no part in it, while showing that no money spent on Harry Potter is going towards hurting trans people, then yes, let's have a revival. Sometimes people genuinely do terrible things. Sometimes criticism is deserved. Sometimes consequences are necessary. But there's a difference between accountability and gendered scapegoating or demanding perfection. And there's a difference between criticizing someone's behavior and deciding that behavior tells us everything we need to know about their character. Because again and again, women aren't simply punished for what they've done, they're punished for failing to be the woman we expected them to be. And that's particularly dangerous when we're talking about women or non-binary people who are already expected to represent something larger than themselves, whether that's queer women or disabled women, women of colour or non-binary people, because suddenly one person's mistake can become evidence against an entire group of people. And perhaps that's why this conversation matters. Not because women should be above criticism and not because celebrities are special. I'm sure that the masses of money they have to wipe their tears with helps a lot. But the things that happen to celebrities affect the normal people on the ground. And women deserve the same thing we seem to give men so readily. Complexity. The ability to be wrong without being irredeemable. The ability to apologise without being permanently defined by the apology. The ability to change, and maybe the ability to be a person rather than a symbol, because this isn't actually a new problem. And if you think cancel culture began with Twitter, wait until you hear about what happened with Anne Boleyn in part 2.
All right, I'm seated.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed this video and you would like to see part 2 coming up soon. And also, remember you can experience true relaxation thanks to Falsetto, the sponsor of today's video, using the link down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.